Today, we're so very blessed. I would like to welcome from the majestic garden island of Kaua'i, Wann and Anake Nalani Kaneakua, who will be presenting on the topic, a very dear topic to us, preserving the limu through practice. Kumule.
Aloha, aloha everyone, and mahalo for joining us today. And you know, out of all the wonderful presentations to pick, you chose this one, and we're very gracious and thankful for that. I am Wann. You can't see me right now, but hopefully we'll work out some technical difficulties, or you'll be able to see us and view us. And I'm sitting here with my dearest auntie, Auntie Nalani Kaneakua. We are Koʻolau Limu Project on the island of Kaua'i. This is my dear auntie, Auntie Nalani.
Aloha everyone, good morning. I'm Nalani Kaneakua. I am from Anahola, Kaua'i. I live and breathe the ocean, and definitely live and breathe the limu. I was having a conversation with Uncle Wally yesterday, and we both were agreed that I guess it's the time, my time. Maybe I'm engrossed in limu to the point where it kind of controls me. You know, I get up and I gotta go check the cages. Before I go to bed, I gotta jump in and check the cages, and yeah. So it's been really what a journey. You know, every time the project starts up again, it's the start of a new journey. You know.
So Nalani, would it be okay if I share some of your pictures from Facebook so you can kind of speak to that until they can get the
yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So can you see what I'm sharing right now?
Yeah. Do I open it like this? Yeah.
Awesome. So let me go to, can the rest of you guys see?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so Kumo, I'm going to put this picture up about you on sunset at the Apapa. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
And then you can just speak to it until we can figure out what to do, if that's okay.
Okay. I'm seeing a picture that I'm holding the Limu Manuel. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yes, that's what you're looking at.
So I go in every day, like I was saying. This was just a day before yesterday, and I go in and I dive and I check the cages and I check if they're secure. I change cords if they're not secure, which means I'm doing work under the water, and I'm cutting and I'm retying lines underneath the water. This particular limu kind of was floating around, and so I picked it up because I could see that the growth from the limu itself, there were all these little branches started to grow out. So we know, and even looking at the cages underwater, that there is growth happening. Under the water, I'm also observing, I'm looking around, like that picture, I picked the cage up and you can see the branches are coming out of the cage. So I'm also observing the water conditions, the clarity. I'm looking at there is life in the cages. So lots of mamo who has found refuge in the cage and probably food. They are eating the manuea, but it's okay. And also I'm observing the blocks, the hollow tile blocks that are holding these cages become a home for the Wann has found their way to it, Hawaii, even some baby manini and some Hinalea. So this whole ecosystem is happening too. Not only the focus is to grow limu, and the type of cage we have is so the spores release into the water and reestablish itself on the apapa. But it's also creating this amazing space for the other creatures to find haven.
Nani Maoli. What is another one that I could share? Oh, yeah, you're also a huge Ulana, amazing person.
Oh,
Here's a picture. Oh, this is you with Lauhala. So here's another picture of you actually putting the cages together at home.
those cages, actually, we had a huge north swell about a week and a half ago, and it was wrapping around our planting site, and it was dragging some of the cages across and away from our original planting site. It was pushing it further south, and some of them even closer to shore. And so what we did is Leigh and I went in and we brought all the cages in so we wouldn't lose the cages. And we took the manawea out and we put it in salt water for just overnight. And we decided to change the setup. We put 2 sandbags per cage, and that's about maybe 80 pounds of weight, and put it back in the site, and it held up pretty well. So for the last couple of days, that's what the heavy monitoring was all about, getting there crack of dawn and before dusk to check if any of the cages has shifted. But so far so good. They remain in the same site that we placed it since.
So is this where the Limu Manawea is, right in this this cylinder right here?
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
So it allows it to establish itself and start to grow without getting eaten by fish and other sea creatures, maybe turtles. But and then once it established itself in that cylinder, it grows out, and the cube is about 14 inches. It grows totally out of that cube and sticks out from the outer.
Wow.
The outer. So by then it has probably multiplied maybe by 4 or 5 times its original what we originally put on. So we put in 8 ounces. By the time we harvest, we should have near a little over 2 pounds of limu.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the limu
So
is just to be protected like that, yeah?
Yeah, back in 1990, when my dad started this project, it was called the Anahola Limu Project. And he recognized the need for this experiment or this project because the limu was disappearing, Limu Manawea, particularly in the area that we are trying to reestablish its growth.
Wann, and as you just saw, that's Nalani Kaneakua, and we are Koʻolau Limu Project. And while Michael is working on finding our presentation, no worries. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and jump into what we really feel is the most important part about education. And we believe, as you may have read in the contents of this program, of this particular presentation, that the best way to teach education is through practice and giving kids experience, or even adults experience. If there's no experience, hands-on application, we know through neuroscience and all kinds of information out there about the way that our brains and education works, that knowledge is only retained for so long if we don't have some kind of relationship with it. So, oh, I believe we're actually presenting now. So maybe we will just jump into these slides and we won't spend so much time. So there we are, and here is our wahi. You can go ahead and skip to the next slide, Michael. We can see we are in this part of Koʻolau, as I mentioned before, or this part of Kaua'i, in Koʻolau, from Anahola to Namahana. A lot of these places in Koʻolau, not many people have heard of, such as Lebe'uli, Ka'aka'aniu, those areas, and maybe Waiakalua. And part of what we do is not only exposing the kids to these wahi, is having them and adults obtain relationships with some of these properties and places and papas. A lot of the problem in this area of Koʻolau is privatization. So you may know of some rich landowners, and when I say rich, I hold that term very lightly, because Waiwai, rich, means all kinds of things. So we do have some issues with privatization in these areas, and it's important to us to teach our keiki on Kaua'i what kinds of relationships they can have with places, and how to gain access, and where the public trails are, and how to establish and assert yourself in a wahi that is facing some land struggles. So anyhow, you can go ahead and skip on over to the next slide, Michael. Yep, and that's our wahi. Here is sort of our mission of Koʻolau Limu Project. You can quickly read through it. And I think one of the most important parts to me of this mission is that we use the word Limu lovers to come. And what we're meaning there is that we're looking for that intrinsic relationship with Limu. Teachers, you know what I'm talking about when we talk about intrinsic. Not talking about a short relationship that ends after I finish with my book and I read you about this lesson, or I take you down to the kai one time and maybe you catch on and maybe you don't. We're talking about that long-term pilina and love for the ocean. So go ahead and skip to the next. We've recently started a foundation called Hosea K. Love Foundation, nonprofit foundation, named after Auntie Nalani here's Papa, her dad. And I'll let you do the slide.
Oh boy.
And if you click on it, Michael, it'll send some arrows out.
Well, that's where I learned everything. I followed this guy on Papa since I was a little kid. My relationship with Limu started with my father and before him. So he was so knowledgeable. He was a master lavaia and took me along with him since I was able to walk, I believe. And I've cherished every moment of that since. And I'm wondering why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Well, because of Dad. So real briefly, he was an amazing fisherman, you know, a Limu practitioner. Like I said, we picked Limu since we was a child. It was part of growing up. It was a condiment on the table, and it was part of our food sustainability. It was a lesson to go out there and pick Limu every time, because it was about reading the signs, about recognizing the currents, the winds, all the different elements that allowed us to go out there. And because of that, I go out there by myself, you know, and everybody's like, you should take someone else, but sometimes it's probably more dangerous to take somebody else because you have to watch them. But my dad started this project called Anahola Limu Project back in 1990, when he recognized that the Limu Manuel was disappearing in Aliomanu. And that's how the project started. My niece and another student at UH, that's how the project started off.
You can go ahead and click through the next bits. Yeah, I always heard as a child, Uncle Hosea was the kilo of Anahola Koʻolau. So just to give you a little bit of overall perspective of Anakala. And I won't spend much time on this, but you can see some of our keiki hard at work in our project, and those are some of our cages that we put out there. But really, again, our main mission at Koʻolau Limu Project is number one, the culture of Limu, the culture of the practice of Limu. We both grew up knowing that as our responsibility. I grew up in a Limu Huli Kaua'i, and that was my responsibility. On the papa was always picking limu, and we want and hope to preserve that for generations to come. So these are kind of what we do. And again, big part of this is instilling that long-term intrinsic relationship, that organic meaning it has to have something established life. Yeah. So for us, the life is your original relationship with limu, going back to the time of wa kumulipo and wa kahia o ke kumulipo. So, all right, Michael, hiki ke holo. Why is limu so important? This is probably something, if you walk away with anything today, you should walk away with this. Everybody at home right now, I cannot see you, but take a deep, huge breath and breathe out. That breath you just took, it said that more research now is pointing towards 70% of that breath right there that you just took. We might think comes from plants and land, but it does not. A majority of our breathing air comes from the macro limus, meaning the limus that we can see in the ocean. And it makes sense if you think of the ocean being about 71% of our Earth's surface. Why wouldn't limu be just as important as plants on land? And I have to be very careful when I say this because I do run a national tropical botanical garden, and we do preserve limu there as well, but herbarium specimens, and I'm growing our collection, but nonetheless, we spend a lot of time on land looking at plants, and I'm not saying that they're not important, and we need the land to perpetuate limu as well. But as much time as we spend on the land, we do need to be thinking about the ocean. In some research recently, we've found that if we were just growing macro limus, 9% of what grows in the ocean, we could fix the Earth's CO2 problems from industrial pollution and return it back to the way it was years and years ago. So imagine that. The answer to breathing in our dirty air is found in limu. There's a couple of really important legislative things coming up with deep sea mining. I really encourage everyone to watch those, because we know that macro limus and that substrate has created a big part of the nutrients we need in our sea floor. And should anything happen to the disturbance of that, good mercy, are we in trouble? And maybe perhaps in a way that it will be unrecoverable. But if you ask both her and I, the answers to a lot of the Earth's problems are in limu. Imagine that.
And it's so funny because I'm always on the papa, and whether I'm picking limu or I'm cleaning the garden, getting ready for new growth, I see uncles coming in with bags, and I'm like, you're taking all my air, so they don't see it that way, but hopefully this is something to share with you, yeah.
All right, and just a funny comic there, and you can go ahead and skip through the next slide. I think we've kind of talked about a little bit of this in the past, but and if any of you are familiar with some of the work I've done in the past, we've had experience that we worked really hard to create curriculum, but I've had instances where through limu, we've increased reading Lexile scores over 300% in one academic year. And that's all by the relationship of limu, and then establishing other relationships like with coral and au and all of that. And through that, we can increase both mathematics scores and limu reading scores as well. So
we have a quick question that popped out. Can limu be grown in aquaponics? or something similar? And the answer is yes. One of the largest growing aquaponic tanks right now is growing the limu we know as ogo. And
I've gone as far, most people who have taught with me will say I'm completely nuts, but I've gone as far as growing it in my classroom. And you're welcome to contact me on the side to learn more about that. I don't recommend it, but it's something could be done to even more draw in like the lessons that you're learning in the classroom. All right, Michael, go ahead and hit us forward and try and keep Limu herbarium specimens and presses on. We try and increase that, and we don't just stick. There's, we're running across new species all the time, or subspecies, and at some point we'll be able to identify those things. We've run across a number of species that we're working on identifying at the moment, and that's kind of the way to go back and tell, if is this puaki, is this manuea, is this a subspecies of manu spotlight. We will try and do or attempt to do a cooking demonstration either through Mahina's Kamepula or okay.
In the meantime, Lei, there's a question in the chat. Do you have any problems with invasive limu in the area?
We have a number of invasives that come through the area, but we try and manage them. So limu, we didn't get to talk about the health aspect yet of limu, but limu holds a lot of your nutritional values that your normal, average, your regular vitamin properties that you're often looking for in limu, and one of those being phosphate. So in particular, the limu that comes in this area that's invasive is one that holds a lot of nitrogen and phosphates. And so we eradicate that, we weed it out, and then we use it in our gardens, our home gardens. So if you're able to identify those, a few common invasive species, depending on which island you are on, would be the gorilla ogo. You can find that in almost every island. We don't have it so much in abundance here, but I know Kaneohe Bay, parts of Maui and Moloka'i have it in abundance. So fun activity, and then also a way to decrease the amount of fertilizers you're using in your hale or in your gardens is to use limu as a fertilizer instead of just we can do something with the invasives. Then there's the hypnea or hook limu that often grows on the apapa and slowly invades the other limus and takes over. So we weed that out, and I actually have some here today. Too bad we're not able to share. The hook limu, and then also the prickly limu as well. And that's called the Echintophora. So we weed those out here in Koʻolau, and then we use them in gardens and make our gardens nice and momona.
I have a question. Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha. So my question is, have you ever heard of, and thank you so much for your presentation. I know there's so many technical problems, but I learned a lot listening to you and to Auntie Nalani. And so my question is, have you heard of freshwater cultivation in the streams?
Yeah.
Where do they do that, or do you know?
Yeah, there are some freshwater limus and algae that grow in the freshwater as well, and those are equally important. And actually, when we were talking earlier about the importance of limu for the purpose of our atmosphere. Oftentimes those micro and macro limus that come from the stream areas end up in our estuaries as well, or go out to our estuaries, and play a huge role in the ecosystem of sustaining those estuaries and the that atmosphere there. And also, you know, of course, our native stream creatures depend on those limus as well as part of their food substance. So it's very important in terms of growing. There is one facility here on Kaua'i that does take some fresh water from our stream, and they grow micro freshwater limus here on the island, and are using it to convert to energy. So there's a lot of countries, well, not a lot, but a lot of interest in particularly Europe in growing both macro and micro limus in the purpose of, for the purpose of creating energy in our, for alternative energy sources. Another really big thing that I don't mean to like draw away from your question from, but when we talk about alternative energies and freshwater limus, those are kind of common for that. Like in Switzerland, I know they have buildings there with freshwater macro limus that are actually converting energy for buildings. We're a little bit behind the game, and maybe one day Auntie Nalani and I will have a Limu powered car or something like that.
You know, I know we're down to like 5 minutes, and I'm just so bummed, but I just wanted to really quick to tell you that one of the dishes we were going to share is a namasu, local favorite cucumber, pickled cucumber that I know myself, I always use wakame. This presentation was going to show you how to use palahalaha, or the sea lettuce, in place of that. And so, you know, I was going to demo a cucumber, olena, daikon, you know, stuff that I have in the ice box. And again, instead of wakame, go and use the palahalaha. It is the sea lettuce, the beautiful green lettuce. You just have to rinse it. You don't have to blanch it or anything. You want to go ahead and use that. Our second dish that I was going to demo was the limu shots. And that one was going to feature the limu lipehu. It's going to go in a blended drink of olena, onions, ginger, chili pepper, vinegar. It's almost like this souped up chili pepper water with limu, yeah? And the pulp from that was going to be our last demonstration, which is, if you love horseradish, that pulp goes into the finest ketchup you can find. And we also made, if you heard of sweet Thai chili sauce, we make our own version, Hawaiian chili sauce that is thickened with the aki, which is another limu that has thickening agents activated by heat. So that's what we add when we're cooking down the chili pepper with sugar, and we add the aki. Leigh also created a few amazing dishes, bread using aki. So I just wish that we could have been able to share this with you guys. And I don't know if we can go ahead and videotape it and maybe somehow bring it to you guys, which we'll probably do after. And however you want to share it, you guys are welcome to share.
Well, actually, we'll tag everybody on the that tag I heard you folks mention this morning. Okay. I believe it was all HCBE 2021. So we'll tag the dishes we made today, including the pesto palahalaha pizza and the bread and everything, and maybe even try and do a short video on a few of them and share them with everybody on the IG world. So Mahanui for dealing with us today, and all of you that hung in there even with all the technical difficulties, and we we cannot.
No, we want to thank you so much, Leigh and Anake Nalani, for sharing with us your ike and your aloha and the efforts that you folks are contributing, not just to the island of Kaua'i, but as you are doing that, the eye opener for me and perhaps a lot of us was you contributing to the safety of our entire globe. And so that's huge. So mahalo nui for sharing that with us. For those of you here, I'm going to ask if you can just turn your cameras on and join me in thanking Kumule and Nalani, and let's show them a round of applause. Mahalo nui for everything. And Lei and Nalani, you can also share the resources with us, with Leanne and myself, and then we'll make sure that we post it to the HCBE conference website for everybody to come on there as well and access those.
All right.
Thank you.
Mahalo nui.